I wish I could say this was just one of those bad dreams people wake up from, shaking their heads, muttering, "Thank goodness it wasn't real." But no, this was my reality. I had just walked into my son's house. His big beautiful home in Maryland, dressed in white silk curtains and fresh lilies for the rehearsal dinner, and my world shattered. There, in the soft glow of the chandelier, I saw my man, my partner of 12 years. His hands wrapped around the waist of a young woman who was supposed to be my future daughter-in-law. My son's fiancée. I froze, clutching the doorframe for balance. My chest ached like someone had dropped a boulder on it. She was in his arms, whispering something in his ear, and the sight made me want to scream, cry, and run all at once. I am Margaret Taylor. I am 83 years old, a retired nurse who once spent her days comforting strangers in hospital rooms. I never thought that, this late in life, I'd be the one standing here in shock, betrayed not just as a woman but as a mother. I whispered under my breath, "Dear God, please let my eyes be deceiving me." But I wasn't mistaken. My man's lips brushed hers like they had done it before. And the girl, Emily, my son's sweet-faced, polite, golden-haired fiancée, didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned closer. The rage that swelled in me nearly tore my heart apart. I could feel the veins in my temples pulsing, my legs trembling under my weight. I was ready to march into that room and scream bloody murder, to tell my son the truth, to claw that girl's face and expose the snake she really was. But just then I felt a strong grip on my wrist. It was my son, Daniel. "Mom!" he whispered fiercely, dragging me back into the hallway. His blue eyes burned, not with confusion but with certainty. "Mom, don't," he said again, voice low and strained. I looked at him like he'd lost his mind. My Daniel, 35 years old, clean-cut in his black rehearsal suit, a man who had suffered enough heartbreak in his life, was now standing here, stopping me from protecting him. "Daniel, they're in there, your fiancé, my man, together. How could you just stand here?" I hissed, my voice shaking with anger and pain. But Daniel's lips pressed close to my ear, and what he whispered chilled me to the bone. "I had a clue, Mom. I just want to catch them red-handed." Blinked, stunned. His jaw was tight, his fists clenched at his side, but his voice was steady. He had known. He had suspected. And instead of breaking down or confronting, he was waiting for this exact moment. "But, Daniel," I started, my throat dry as ash. "Please, Mom," he begged softly, his voice cracking now. "Don't ruin this. Don't go in there. Just watch. I need to know exactly who I'm marrying, or who I'm not marrying." I stared at him, my own son, torn between rage and heartbreak. Was I really supposed to just watch? To stand back while my partner, the man who had promised to love me until the end, betrayed me in the arms of my son's bride-to-be? Could hardly breathe. My head spun. The hallway smelled faintly of roses from the wedding decorations, but suddenly it felt like poison filling my lungs. Daniel squeezed my hand tighter. "We'll get them, Mom. But not now. Not yet." I bit my lip until I tasted blood. My whole body shook with fury, but his eyes. Oh, his eyes begged me to trust him. And as much as I wanted to storm in there, scream, and end it all, I couldn't break my son's plea. So I stood there. An 83-year-old mother, trembling in silence, as the muffled sounds of laughter and whispers spilled out from that cursed room. Inside, my man chuckled softly, the same chuckle he used with me on our porch when we drank lemonade in the summer evenings. Only now, he gave it to another woman. A girl young enough to be his granddaughter. And worse, my son's bride. My nails dug into my palm. My stomach twisted. How long had this gone on? Weeks? Months? Was the entire wedding a sham? I wanted to vomit. I leaned against the wall, whispering to myself, "Lord, don't let me fall down right here." Daniel pressed his back against the wall beside me, listening, waiting. His face was pale, but his jaw was stone. Suddenly the door cracked open. Froze. Daniel stiffened. And then, out stepped Emily, my son's fiancée. Her lipstick slightly smudged, her blonde curls tousled, her dress strap slipping off one shoulder. She looked flushed, guilty, but then her eyes locked on me. Our gazes collided. Her face went white. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Daniel's hand dropped from mine. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the string quartet downstairs. "Mom!" Daniel muttered under his breath. I opened my mouth to speak. But before I could say a word, Emily's lips curled into a smile. A sly, mocking smile that made my blood run cold. And then she whispered, so quietly I almost thought I imagined it. "You weren't supposed to see this." Her words pierced me like a knife. You weren't supposed to see this. It wasn't just the arrogance in her tone. It was the certainty. Emily wasn't panicking. She wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't even trying to cover up what she had done. She looked at me, an old woman, like I was powerless. I clenched my cane tighter. My son, Daniel, stood frozen beside me. His chest heaving but his voice gone. I could see the storm in his eyes, the pain eating at him. But he stayed still, like a soldier waiting for the right command. My heart broke for him. He had always been cautious in love. I remembered the nights he sat on my porch after his first divorce, staring into the empty yard, saying, "Mom, maybe I'm just not meant to be loved." When Emily came into his life, I thought God had finally answered his prayers. And now here she was, mocking us. I stepped forward, my frail voice trembling. "Emily, what have you done?" Her sly smile widened. She straightened her dress strap, glanced back into the room where my man was still seated, shirt half unbuttoned, sipping a glass of wine like the world was his, and then she leaned closer to me. "What's the point of asking, Margaret?" she whispered, her eyes glinting. "You already know. And trust me, your son knows too." Daniel's breath hitched, and his fists balled at his sides. I turned to him, panic rising. "Daniel, don't let her talk to you like that." But Daniel didn't answer me. His eyes were locked on Emily, burning with something between hatred and sorrow. Emily tilted her head, her blonde curls falling like golden ropes around her shoulders. She looked at him and said, with a voice so soft yet so cruel, "Sweetheart, you always knew I wasn't yours alone. You just didn't want to admit it." My knees nearly buckled. I gripped the wall, the air rushing out of my lungs. "Daniel!" gasped. But he stayed silent. His face was stone, though his eyes glistened. He had suspected, yes, but hearing it this way from her lips was a dagger through his chest. Emily smirked, as if this were all some cruel game. Then, brushing past me, she whispered, "If you're smart, you'll keep quiet. Both of you." The nerve. The audacity. My blood boiled. I grabbed her wrist, my old fingers digging into her soft skin. "Listen to me, young lady," I hissed, my voice trembling but strong. "You will not humiliate my son. Not in this house. Not before God. Not ever." Her blue eyes narrowed. "Then keep your mouth shut, Grandma." "Grandma." She spat the word like an insult. Before I could respond, Daniel pulled my hand away. "Mom," he muttered, his voice sharp but trembling. "Let her go." Emily smoothed her dress, shot me a cold smirk, and walked down the hall, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor like a ticking clock, every step a reminder of betrayal. The moment she disappeared around the corner, Daniel exhaled shakily and leaned his head against the wall. I grabbed his shoulders. "Daniel, we can't let this wedding happen. We can't let that snake walk down the aisle with you tomorrow." But his eyes told me something else. He turned to me slowly, his jaw tightening. "Mom, I don't think she ever loved me. But I need to know something. I need to know if this was just her, or if—" He trailed off, his voice cracking. I blinked, confused. "If what, Daniel?" His lips trembled before the words came out. "If he, your man, was part of this all along." My breath caught in my throat. The man I loved. The man who spent every Christmas with me. The man who held my hand when my arthritis got bad. Could he really betray not just me, but my son too? The thought was unbearable. But Daniel's eyes didn't waver. He was serious. Daniel, don't say that, I whispered, shaking my head. You think your stepfather, after all these years, would destroy both of us like this? Daniel's silence was louder than any answer. And then suddenly the door creaked open again. Both of us whipped our heads toward it. And there he was. Man. He leaned against the doorway, his shirt still loose, his hair slightly mussed, a glass of whiskey in his hand. His face carried no guilt, only amusement. Well, he drawled, his voice deep and smooth. I see the two of you finally caught on. My blood ran cold. Daniel stiffened beside me, his entire body trembling with rage. And I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Caught on, croaked. He smirked. Come now, Margaret. Did you really think Emily was marrying Daniel for love? Or did you think she was marrying him for what we could give her? That one word shattered me. I staggered back, clutching my chest, trying to breathe. Daniel's voice roared through the hallway, raw and broken. What the hell do you mean by we? The word we echoed through my ears like a funeral bell. Not just her. Not just Emily. Him too. I stared at the man I had shared my life with for 12 years. His smirk, his calm posture, the casual way he swirled whiskey in his glass. It was like betrayal had never felt so easy for him. Answer me. Daniel's voice thundered, his face red, his fists trembling. What the hell do you mean by we? My man chuckled low, almost mocking. He leaned on the doorframe like we were discussing the weather. Don't get so worked up, Daniel. Emily's young, ambitious. She wanted security. I offered her that. And in return, he gestured with his glass toward the hallway where she had walked out. She offered me companionship. I gasped, clutching my cane tighter to stop myself from collapsing. My heart thudded in my ears. My hands shook violently. You filthy liar. I shouted, my voice cracking with rage. After everything I gave you, after all these years, you betray me with my son's bride? He had the audacity to grin. Margaret, don't act like a saint. You were lonely, I was there. We both got what we wanted. Did you really think this was forever? His words sliced through me. Loneliness. That was all he thought I was worth. Loneliness filled with scraps of affection. Daniel took a step forward, his chest heaving. So what was your plan? To let me marry her while you two carried on behind my back? Silence. And then the faintest smirk crossed his lips. Daniel's face twisted in horror. Oh my God. That's exactly what you planned. I reached for his arm. Daniel, don't. But he pulled away, storming up to the man I once thought I'd grow old with. His voice roared, raw and trembling. You were going to let me marry her while you kept sleeping with her. What kind of monster are you? For the first time, my man's calm mask faltered. He set the whiskey down on the dresser, his jaw tightening. Watch your tone, boy. Oi. He called my 35-year-old son, my flesh and blood boy. Daniel's fist clenched so hard his knuckles whitened. I could see it. The rage bubbling, the years of respect he gave this man collapsing into ashes. But before he could strike, I stepped between them, pressing my frail hands to his chest. Daniel, don't, I begged, tears streaming down my cheeks. Don't do this here, not like this. That's what they want, to destroy you. Don't give them the satisfaction. My son's chest heaved under my palms. His eyes glistened with fury, but I knew, deep down, I was his anchor. The only thing keeping him from doing something he couldn't take back. Still, my voice shook as I turned to the man I once loved. Why, Harold? Why would you do this to us? To me. To him. He stared at me coldly. Because it was easy. Easy. The floor seemed to vanish beneath me. All those nights of laughter, all those holidays, all those little kisses when no one was watching. Worthless. Just because betrayal was easy. Daniel's voice broke through my despair, low and trembling. Get out. Harold scoffed. Excuse me. Daniel's eyes burned like fire. I said, get out of this house before I drag you out. The silence was sharp, deadly. Harold studied him for a moment, then let out a small laugh, cold and humorless. You think this house is yours, Daniel? You think Emily was marrying you because she loved you? Well, she was marrying into my money, my connections, my life. He jabbed his finger into his own chest. Not you. Me. Daniel lunged forward, but again I held him back with everything my frail body had. Stop, Daniel. Please, begged, my voice breaking. And then, before either of us could breathe, Emily reappeared at the end of the hall. Her arms crossed, her lips curled into that same sly smirk. But this time she wasn't alone. Behind her stood two men. Strangers. Both tall, dressed in dark suits, their eyes sharp, their presence intimidating. Emily's voice rang out, cool and venomous. Maybe you should listen to him, Daniel. Because if you don't, things are about to get very ugly. The hallway went deathly silent. Emily stood there, arms crossed, her blonde curls framing that smug little face I had once thought angelic. But it wasn't her that made my knees weaken. It was the two men behind her, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in matching dark suits that didn't belong at a wedding rehearsal. Their eyes swept over me and Daniel like predators sizing up prey. I clutched my cane tighter, my knuckles white. My heart hammered so loudly I could hear it in my ears. Daniel stepped protectively in front of me. His jaw clenched. Emily, he said, his voice low but steady. Who are they? Emily's smirk deepened. Friends. Harold. My Harold, the man I had loved, had the audacity to chuckle. Not friends, Emily. Business associates. Daniel's shoulders tensed. Business associates. What does that mean? I could see Harold's smugness oozing. Daniel, you really think this wedding was just about love? Emily and I had plans. Big ones. And these men? Well, let's just say they're here to make sure those plans go smoothly. My stomach turned. The air in the hallway suddenly felt heavy, like poison filling my lungs. Emily took a step closer, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Her voice soft but cutting. Daniel, you were never the prize. You were just the cover. Name. The gullible one. Daniel's fists shook at his sides. His face was pale, his eyes burning. You played me, he whispered, his voice cracking. Emily leaned forward slightly, her lips curling into a cruel smile. No, sweetheart. I outsmarted you. Something inside me snapped. You wicked, heartless snake. I shouted, stepping forward with more fire than I thought my old body still had. You're not outsmarting anyone. You're ruining lives. And you. I jabbed my cane toward Harold, my voice trembling with fury. You're a disgrace. To betray a son, a woman who loved you, just for what? Money. Lust. The suits stepped forward then, their movements slow but deliberate. Daniel instantly pulled me behind him. Stay back, he barked. His voice was shaking, but it was filled with a raw kind of power I hadn't heard since he was a boy standing up to bullies. Emily raised her eyebrows, amused. Oh, Daniel. You think you can stop this? Can't. It's bigger than you. My son's chest heaved, his voice breaking. Then try me. For a moment, everyone froze, the four of them staring each other down. The air was thick with rage, betrayal, and something darker. Something dangerous. And then Harold spoke again, his voice cold. Enough games. Margaret, Daniel, you should go. Tonight. If you know what's good for you. Daniel whipped around, eyes wide. Go. This is my house. But Harold shook his head slowly, sipping from his glass like nothing was wrong. Not anymore. You'll see soon enough. My knees buckled. The cane nearly slipped from my grip. Not his house. What was he saying? I looked at Daniel, panic rising in my throat. Daniel, what does he mean? Daniel's jaw tightened. His eyes darted to me, then back to Harold. He's bluffing, he muttered. He has to be. But the way Harold smirked, like a wolf cornering its prey, made my stomach twist. Emily tilted her head, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. You never bothered to read the fine print, did you, Daniel? The mortgage, the accounts, the shares. She trailed off, her smile widening. I gasped, realization slamming into me like a truck. Daniel, they've taken everything. My son's eyes widened in horror. His breathing quickened, his fists trembling at his sides. No, no, that's impossible. This house is mine. I worked for this. I built my life back up after the divorce. Harold cut him off sharply, his voice like a blade. No, Daniel. I built this life for you. And just as easily I can take it away. Tears burned my eyes. My whole body trembled with rage. How could I have been so blind? This man hadn't just betrayed me in love. He had betrayed my son in every way that mattered. But before I could speak, one of the suited men stepped closer. He leaned down to Daniel's face, his voice low and menacing. Best do what they say. Walk away quietly. Otherwise. He let the threat hang in the air. Daniel's jaw clenched. He grabbed my arm tightly, whispering, "Mom, stay behind me." I nodded, though my heart felt like it was going to explode. My mind screamed with fury, but my body was too frail to fight. And then, just as the silence grew unbearable, there was a sharp, sudden knock at the front door. Everyone froze. Emily's smirk faltered. Harold stiffened. The two men in suits exchanged quick glances. The knock came again, louder this time. Daniel's eyes widened. He whispered almost to himself, "That's the sheriff's knock." The knock thundered through the house again. 3 sharp raps that carried the weight of authority. Everyone in the hallway froze. Emily's smirk faltered, her lips pressing into a thin line. Harold straightened, suddenly less smug. The 2 suited men stiffened, their eyes narrowing like wolves sensing danger. Daniel turned his head slowly toward the door. His jaw was set, but there was something in his eyes, hope. "That's the sheriff," he whispered again, this time louder, as if reassuring himself. I clutched his arm. My voice trembled. "Daniel, did you call him?" He shook his head quickly. "No. But maybe someone heard something." The knock came again, this time accompanied by a deep voice. "Sheriff's Department. Open the door." Emily's eyes darted to Harold. Panic flickered across her face, but she masked it with a forced laugh. "Relax. Probably just a noise complaint. We'll handle it." Harold, however, wasn't laughing. He set his glass down hard on the dresser, the sound sharp as a gunshot. "Stay quiet," he hissed. But Daniel didn't listen. For the first time in hours, his shoulders squared. He looked taller, stronger, as though betrayal had lit a fire inside him. He stepped forward. "No," he said firmly. "I'm opening that door." The 2 suited men blocked his path instantly, moving in unison like trained guards. One of them barked, "No one's opening that door." I clutched my cane, my heart pounding in terror. The sheriff's voice boomed again from outside. "We know someone's in there. Open up now." Harold's face twisted, his calm mask finally cracking. "Emily," he muttered sharply. "Get rid of them. Now." Emily's eyes widened. "What do you want me to say?" "Make something up," Harold snapped. But Daniel had already moved. In a flash, he shoved past one of the suited men, his body fueled by years of bottled-up pain and betrayal. The man stumbled, unprepared for Daniel's sudden strength. Before the second guard could grab him, Daniel yanked the front door open. And there, standing tall under the porch light, was Sheriff Reynolds, a broad-shouldered man in his 50s with a thick mustache and piercing eyes. 2 deputies flanked him. The moment the door swung open, Reynolds' gaze fell on Daniel's pale, trembling face. "Evening, son. Everything all right in here?" Daniel's voice cracked. "No, Sheriff. Nothing's all right." Behind him, Harold barked, "Close that door, Daniel." The sheriff's eyes flicked past my son's shoulder into the hallway. He saw Harold. He saw Emily. He saw the suited men. And his face hardened. "Step aside, Daniel," he ordered. Daniel obeyed instantly, moving back with a kind of desperate relief. Sheriff Reynolds entered, his boots heavy against the hardwood. His deputies followed, hands resting near their holsters. The air shifted, no longer controlled by Harold and Emily, but by law. "Harold Whitman," the sheriff said slowly, his eyes narrowing. "Didn't expect to find you here." My heart skipped. He knew Harold. Harold forced a smile, his voice smooth but strained. "Sheriff Reynolds. Always a pleasure. What brings you here tonight?" The sheriff didn't smile back. "Funny. We had an anonymous tip earlier this evening. Said there was something rotten going on at this address. Something about fraud, coercion." Emily stiffened. The suited men exchanged glances. Fraud. Coercion. My knees trembled. Could it be someone already knew what they'd been plotting? Sheriff Reynolds stepped further inside, his eyes scanning the scene. The disheveled strap of Emily's dress, Harold's half-unbuttoned shirt, my pale trembling face, Daniel's clenched fists. "Looks to me," the sheriff said slowly, "like that anonymous caller was telling the truth." Emily snapped then, her voice sharp and desperate. "This is none of your business. We're just having a private family matter." The sheriff turned his piercing gaze on her. "Ma'am, when two strange men in suits are standing guard in a family's home, it becomes my business." The suited men stepped forward, puffing their chests, but Reynolds' deputies instantly reached for their belts. The room went tense, the threat of violence thick in the air. I clutched Daniel's arm, whispering, "Please don't let this turn ugly." Harold raised his hands slightly, his voice smooth again. "Let's not escalate things here. Sheriff, I can explain." But Reynolds cut him off. "Save it. We've been watching you for months, Whitman. And now catching you here." He shook his head slowly. "This might be the last nail in your coffin." Daniel's head snapped toward me. His eyes were wide, full of shock. "Mom, what is he talking about?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry as sandpaper. My chest felt like it might cave in. The sheriff's words still rang in my ears. "Watching you for months." Had Harold been living a double life all along? Before I could answer my son, Sheriff Reynolds took a step closer to Harold, his voice low but deadly firm. "Harold Whitman, you're under arrest." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. "Harold Whitman, you're under arrest." For the first time since I had known him, Harold's smug composure cracked. His jaw tightened, his eyes darting nervously toward Emily, then to the two suited men. Emily's face twisted, her smirk gone. "What do you mean, under arrest? On what grounds?" she snapped, her voice rising. Sheriff Reynolds didn't even look at her. His gaze was locked on Harold. Fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, and from the looks of things tonight, maybe even coercion and conspiracy. I staggered, clutching Daniel's arm to stay upright. My mind spun. Fraud, embezzlement, identity theft. Harold's life with me had always seemed ordinary. He drank his whiskey at sunset, cut the grass on weekends, played poker with friends. Was that all a mask? Daniel's voice shook as he demanded, "What the hell are you talking about?" "Sheriff, he's been living with my mom for 12 years. Reynolds nodded grimly. "Exactly. And for 12 years he's been covering his tracks. Different names, different accounts, always moving, always hiding." My heart dropped into my stomach. I turned to Harold, my voice breaking. "Is this true? Harold, who are you really?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. His eyes flickered with something I had never seen before, fear. The sheriff stepped forward, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "Enough lies, Whitman. Hands where I can see them." The two suited men moved instantly, stepping in front of Harold. One of them barked, "You're not laying a hand on him." Reynolds didn't flinch. His deputies drew their weapons in a flash, aiming squarely at the men. The air in the hallway thickened with dread. Emily let out a panicked laugh, her voice high-pitched. "This is ridiculous. You can't just barge in here and arrest him without proof. The sheriff turned his cold eyes on her. Proof? We've been building it for months, ma'am. And tonight, you just handed us more than enough. Her face went pale. She opened her mouth to argue, but Harold's voice boomed, cutting through the chaos. Don't say another word, Emily. His tone was sharp, commanding, like he was trying to protect her. Or silence her. But it was too late. Emily snapped. Her voice cracked, tears brimming in her eyes. Protect me. You used me. You promised me everything. You promised this house, the money, the life. You told me marrying Daniel was just a formality, that you'd take care of me when it was done. Daniel froze, his face pale as a ghost. My breath caught in my throat. Harold's face hardened. Shut up, Emily. But Emily wasn't finished. She pointed at him, her hands trembling. You told me Margaret was old, weak, that she wouldn't notice. You told me Daniel was desperate, easy to manipulate. You said you'd pull the strings, that I'd just have to play along. Her words stabbed me deeper than any knife. My knees buckled, and I nearly collapsed if not for Daniel catching me. I whispered, "Oh dear God." Daniel's eyes burned with rage. He turned on Harold, his voice a roar. You used us. Both of us. All this time, you were planning this. Harold didn't answer. His silence said everything. Sheriff Reynolds stepped closer, his cuffs ready. That's enough. Harold Whitman, you're coming with me. But just as he reached forward, Harold snapped into action. In one swift motion, he shoved Emily hard against the wall. She gasped, stumbling as Harold bolted toward the back door. Stop him! Daniel yelled. The deputies lunged forward, but the suited men blocked their path, fists flying. The hallway erupted into chaos. Grunts, shouts, the sound of furniture crashing. I clutched Daniel's arm, trembling, as the sheriff himself sprinted after Harold. For a moment, all I could see was Emily slumped against the wall, her mascara streaked, her lips trembling. Her eyes darted toward me, wild, desperate. And then she whispered, barely audible over the chaos. Margaret, you don't know the half of it. My stomach clenched. I leaned closer, gripping my cane, my voice trembling. What do you mean? Her lips parted, and with a shaky breath, she confessed. He's not who you think he is. He's not Harold Whitman at all. His real name is. But before she could finish, a gunshot split the air. The sound echoed through the house, sharp and terrifying. Everyone froze. Daniel's eyes widened in horror. Mom, that came from the back door. The gunshot ripped through the house like a lightning bolt. For a second no one moved. My heart nearly stopped. My hands clutched Daniel's sleeve so tight my knuckles went white. Then chaos erupted again. Boots pounding across the floor, deputies shouting, the suited men retreating toward the back. Stay here, Mom, Daniel ordered, his voice raw, before sprinting down the hall after the sheriff. Daniel, no, I cried, my voice cracking. But he was already gone, swallowed by the darkened corridor. I turned to Emily, who was still slumped against the wall. Her mascara was streaked down her cheeks, her lips trembling. Her earlier arrogance had melted into fear. My cane shook as I leaned toward her. What did you mean, Emily? His real name, what is it? She pressed a hand to her chest, her breaths shallow. Her eyes flicked toward the back of the house where the gunshot had come from. If I tell you, we're all in danger. I grabbed her wrist, my voice trembling but firm. Tell me anyway. Her blue eyes locked onto mine, wide with terror. His name isn't Harold Whitman. It's Gregory Holt. He's been running cons for decades. Different towns, different women, different names. He makes them trust him, and then he takes everything. My breath hitched. The room spun. Gregory Holt. Emily nodded quickly, her voice breaking. He's wanted in 3 states. And he told me this was going to be his last score. That after me, after Daniel's money, after your house, he'd disappear forever. My blood turned cold. My legs nearly gave way. "Dear Lord," I whispered. "What have I done, letting him into my life?" Before I could process, another crash shook the house, this time from the kitchen. Shouts rang out. Then I heard Daniel's voice, sharp and desperate. "Sheriff! He's heading for the woods." I tried to move toward the sound, but my body felt so heavy, my chest pounding. Every step felt like climbing a mountain. Emily grabbed my arm suddenly, her nails digging into my skin. "Margaret, listen to me. If they catch him, you have to stay quiet about me. Do you understand?" I didn't know how deep this went. I thought he just wanted money. "If you tell them I was in on it." I yanked my arm back, fire rising in my chest. "You thought you could play with my son's life, my family's name, and walk away clean?" Her lips trembled, but before she could answer, the sheriff's voice roared from outside. "Stop! Don't move!" And then came another gunshot. Louder. Closer. I froze, my blood turning to ice. Silence followed. An awful, suffocating silence. I staggered toward the back of the house, my cane clacking against the hardwood floor. My whole body trembled, fear clawing at my chest. "Daniel!" cried out. "Daniel, answer me." No reply. Only the distant crunch of boots in the backyard. I forced my body forward until I reached the porch door. The night air hit me like a cold slap. The sheriff and his deputies stood in the yard, their flashlights cutting through the trees. And there, on the ground, face down in the dirt, was Harold. Or Gregory. Or whatever his name truly was. Blood spread across the grass beneath him. Daniel stood a few feet away, his face pale, his hands trembling at his sides. His eyes locked on me, wide and hollow. "Mom," his voice cracked. "He's not dead." The sheriff bent over the fallen man, checking for a pulse. His grim face lifted toward us. "He's breathing. But barely." My chest heaved. My mind spun. Not dead. Why did that terrify me more than if he was? And then, as if on cue, his head turned slightly, his lips curling into the faintest bloodied smile. His eyes, those cold, familiar eyes, locked right onto mine. And he whispered, so faintly I could barely hear, "It's not over." His voice was faint, broken by blood, but I heard it clear as day. "It's not over." The words slithered into my ears, coiling around my spine like a venomous snake. I clutched my cane, my entire body trembling. How could a man bleeding on the ground still carry that much power in his voice? The sheriff leaned down, pressing a hand firmly against Harold. "No, Gregory's back. Save your breath. You're done." But Gregory just chuckled weakly, a sound that chilled me more than the night air. His bloodied lips curled. "You think this ends with me, Sheriff? You're wrong. You have no idea what's already been set in motion." Daniel took a step forward, his face pale and horrified. "What does that mean? What did you do?" Gregory coughed, blood flecking the grass, but his eyes gleamed with twisted amusement. "Check the house, check the papers. Everything you thought was yours, Daniel, it's not." The sheriff scowled. "Enough riddles. Deputies, get him up." They hauled him to his feet, cuffing his bloody wrists behind his back. He groaned, stumbling, but that smirk never left his face. It was like he wanted us to panic. I turned to Daniel, gripping his arm desperately. "Son, don't listen to him. He's trying to break you." But Daniel's eyes were distant, troubled. "Mom, what if he's telling the truth?" Before I could answer, Emily appeared in the doorway behind us. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, but her voice carried sharp and clear. "He is telling the truth." We all turned. The deputies froze, the sheriff stiffened, and Daniel's eyes widened. Emily crossed her arms, her face pale but defiant. "There are documents. In the study. Gregory made me sign them. This house. The accounts. Most of it isn't in Daniel's name anymore. It's in his." She jerked her chin toward the man in cuffs. "No." Daniel's voice cracked. He shook his head furiously. That's impossible. I paid for this house. Every dime. I rebuilt everything after the divorce. I know what I signed. Emily's voice softened, almost pitying. Do you? Because Gregory is very good at making people sign what they don't understand. Daniel's hands balled into fists, his entire body trembling. You lying snake. Daniel! I snapped, grabbing his arm before he lunged at her. My voice quivered but held firm. She's not worth it. Don't let her drag you down. Emily's lips curled. I already did. The sheriff narrowed his eyes at her. You realize you just confessed to participating in fraud, ma'am. You could be facing charges yourself. For the first time, Emily's confidence wavered. Her voice cracked. I didn't know how deep it went. I thought it was just a scheme. He promised me we'd be safe, that no one would ever find out. Gregory laughed then, a deep, raspy laugh that made my skin crawl. Safe? You stupid girl. You're just another pawn. You were never going to be safe. Emily's face twisted, tears welling in her eyes. She looked from Gregory to me, and then finally to Daniel. Her voice broke. I never meant to hurt you, Daniel. Swear. I just wanted a way out of my life. I didn't know he'd ruin yours too. Daniel's jaw clenched. His voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper. You destroyed me, Emily. And you knew exactly what you were doing. She flinched, but before she could answer, the sheriff barked. Enough. Deputies, secure both of them. We'll sort it out downtown. The deputies moved quickly, grabbing Emily by the arm. She shrieked. No. Please don't take me. I can help you. I know where he hid the rest. Everyone froze. The sheriff's voice lowered dangerously. What did you just say? Emily's chest heaved. Her eyes darted between us all. He kept things. Documents. Bank books. Drive. He hid them in the house. If you find them, you'll see everything. The money, the fraud. All of it. The sheriff turned to his deputies. Search the study. Daniel's voice cracked. Wait, my study. Emily smirked faintly through her tears. Not yours anymore. My chest ached as I watched my son's face crumble. He looked like a boy again, helpless, betrayed, lost. The deputies disappeared inside. Minutes felt like hours as silence weighed heavy over us. Then one of them called out, Sheriff, you better come see this. We all hurried back inside, my cane tapping against the floor, my heart hammering in my chest. In the study, one deputy had pulled a false panel from the back of a bookshelf. Behind it sat a locked metal box. The sheriff knelt, pried it open, and pulled out a thick stack of papers and a black USB drive. His face darkened as he flipped through the documents. Deeds, counts, and... He lifted one page higher, his brow furrowed. My God! Offshore accounts under Daniel's name. Daniel's face went white. What? I never. Gregory chuckled behind us, his bloody lips curling. Congratulations, son. If I go down, you're going down with me. The sheriff's words hit like a sledgehammer. Offshore accounts. Under Daniel's name. Daniel's face drained of color. His mouth opened, but no words came out at first. His chest heaved as if he'd been punched in the stomach. That's not possible. Sheriff, I swear to God, I've never seen those papers in my life. Gregory's bloody grin widened, even as the deputies held him upright. Oh, but they're real, boy. Every cent, every wire transfer, every shell company. All in your good name. You'll make a fine patsy. No, Daniel shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. This is a setup. He forged everything. He made it look like me. Sheriff Reynolds' eyes narrowed. He sifted through the papers again, his jaw tight. These documents are thorough. Signatures, account numbers, timestamps. If they're fake, they're damn convincing. Emily's voice broke in, shrill and frantic. He made me watch him do it. He forged everything. Daniel didn't know. Please, You have to believe me. Gregory barked out a laugh that made my skin crawl. Oh, now you want to save the boy. Sweetheart, you're too late. You're as guilty as I am. Emily's lips trembled. No, I didn't know it would go this far. I didn't know he'd frame Daniel. I clutched my cane with both hands, my voice trembling but strong. Sheriff, you know my son. You've known him since he was a boy. Do you really believe he'd build fake accounts in the Cayman Islands? Daniel doesn't even balance his checkbook without asking me for help. Daniel's face burned with shame, but he nodded desperately. She's right. Sheriff, please. You've seen me struggle, you've seen me try to rebuild. I wouldn't throw it all away on something like this. Reynolds' gaze flicked between my son's broken face and Gregory's smug one. He exhaled slowly, like the weight of the entire county was on his shoulders. Finally he muttered, "We'll have to bring both of you in." The words slammed into me like a blade. Both? I gasped, my chest tightening. You can't mean Daniel. I have no choice, Margaret, Reynolds said firmly. Until we sort this out, he's a suspect too. Daniel's eyes widened in disbelief. You're arresting me. For something he did. He pointed at Gregory, fury spilling out of him. You're letting him win. Gregory smirked, blood still smeared across his lips. Told you, boy. You were always the easy one to play. Daniel lunged, his fist flying, but two deputies caught him before he could connect. His voice roared, raw with pain. You ruined my life. You ruined my mother's life. I stumbled forward, my chest heaving. Sheriff, please don't take my son. Not after everything. But Reynolds' face was stone. He motioned to his deputies. Cuff him. No. I screamed, my voice breaking. My cane clattered to the floor as I reached out, but the deputies were already snapping cold steel around Daniel's wrists. Mom! Daniel's eyes locked on mine, wild and desperate. Don't let them do this, I swear I didn't do anything. Tears blurred my vision. My heart felt like it was splitting in two. I know, son. I know. Emily suddenly cried out, stumbling forward. Wait. There's more. You haven't seen everything. He made copies. He told me if anything happened to him, the files would be sent out. They'll destroy Daniel no matter what. The sheriff turned sharply. Where are they? Emily shook her head, trembling. I don't know. He hid them. Somewhere in this house. All eyes turned to Gregory. His smirk deepened. Check every drawer, every wall, every floorboard if you want. You'll never find them. The sheriff's face hardened. Take them both to the station. We'll search the house ourselves. I staggered back, my body trembling with fury. My son, my boy. Dragged away in cuffs like a criminal. And the man who had destroyed us. Still grinning through blood. Daniel's voice echoed as they pulled him toward the door. Mom, don't give up on me. Please, don't let them bury me for something I didn't do. I won't, I cried, my voice breaking. I swear, Daniel, I won't. And then the door slammed behind them, the sound like a death knell. I stood frozen in the wreckage of my life. My cane gone, my son taken, my heart shattered. Emily sobbed quietly against the wall, her mascara smeared, her body shaking. And in the silence that followed, I heard it. Faint beeping. Low. Steady. Coming from inside the study. Emily's head snapped up. Her eyes widened in terror. No, she whispered, her face draining of color. He didn't, he wouldn't. I stared at her, my breath caught in my throat. What is it? She swallowed hard, her voice barely audible. He booby-trapped the house. The faint beeping grew louder. Slow, steady like a heartbeat. Emily's face had gone ghost white. Her hands shook as she pressed them to her ears. He told me once, she whispered, her voice trembling. He said, if anyone ever turned on him, he'd make sure no one got out clean. He wasn't bluffing. My chest tightened, every beat of my old heart echoing with dread. Are you telling me he wired this house? Emily nodded slowly, her eyes brimming with tears. Not the whole house, just the study. He said it was his insurance. He kept the papers, the drive, everything here. But if anyone tried to expose him, he'd wipe it all out. I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself, my cane lying forgotten on the floor. Dear God! The beeping quickened. Emily scrambled to the hidden compartment where the deputies had pulled the lockbox from. Her hands flew over the wood, desperate, searching. There has to be a way to shut it down. Emily! I snapped, my voice sharp despite the quiver. If you know something, tell me now. Her shoulders shook. I saw him use a code once. 4 digits. He kept muttering them under his breath like a prayer. But I don't remember. I don't remember all of it. I staggered toward her, clutching her arm with a strength I didn't know I still had. Then remember, girl. Because my son is sitting in a cell right now, framed for that devil's crimes. And if this study blows, all the evidence we need to clear him will be gone. Her blue eyes filled with tears as she whispered. It was 1-9-8. And then something. I swear that's all I remember. The beeping sped up, faster now, sharper. My hands trembled, my chest heaved. Try it, cried. She stumbled toward the small metal device tucked deep behind the books, a blinking red light on its face. She punched in 1-9-8-2. The beeping continued. She tried 1-9-8-4. Nothing. 1-9-8-7. Still nothing. Her fingers shook so badly she nearly dropped the keypad. I forced myself to think through the haze of panic. What numbers would he use? A birthday. An anniversary. A date he'd never forget. And then it hit me. The day he moved into my life. The day I let him in. Emily! Shouted. Try 1-9-9-9. She froze, then punched it in with trembling hands. The beeping stopped. Silence. For a moment we both just stood there, our chests heaving, sweat beading our faces. Then, slowly, the red light blinked green. Emily collapsed against the wall, sobbing in relief. I pressed a trembling hand to my chest, whispering, "Thank you, Lord, thank you." The sheriff stormed back into the study at that moment, deputies behind him, dragging Gregory still in cuffs. His face was pale, his smirk finally gone. What the hell just happened in here? Reynolds barked. I turned to him, my voice trembling but strong. Sheriff, he wired the study. He was going to destroy the evidence. But we stopped it. The sheriff's eyes widened as he glanced at the blinking green light. His jaw clenched. You two just saved us a whole lot of proof. Gregory's head snapped toward me, his bloody eyes blazing with fury. You think this changes anything? You think they'll believe a senile old woman and a weeping girl over me? I'll bury you both. I lifted my cane from the floor, planted it firmly, and stood tall despite the years on my back. My voice rang out steady as iron. No, Gregory. You're finished. And for once, you're the one who's been played. The sheriff motioned to his deputies. Get him out of my sight. As they dragged him away, still shouting threats, I turned to Emily. She was crumpled on the floor, her face streaked with tears. She looked up at me, broken. Margaret, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I stared at her, my heart aching with 100 emotions. Anger, sorrow, exhaustion. Finally, I said softly, you'll have to answer for what you did. But if you truly want to make things right, testify. Tell them everything. She nodded, sobbing harder. Hours later, when dawn's light began to filter through the shattered windows, the sheriff released Daniel from his cuffs. My son stumbled into my arms, his face buried against my shoulder like he was a boy again. Mom, he whispered, his voice breaking. I thought I'd lost everything. I held him tight, tears streaming down my wrinkled cheeks. Not everything, son. Not while I'm still here. And as the first rays of sunlight lit the ruined study, I knew the truth. The man I had trusted was gone. The girl I had welcomed as family was shattered. But my son, my Daniel, was still standing. And together we would rebuild. Because sometimes revenge isn't about screaming or striking back. Sometimes revenge is simply surviving, long enough to watch the people who tried to destroy you finally fall.